All right. See if it works this time. See if it works this time. Third time's the charm, hopefully. Let me invite some people. All right. I hope Kublai Khan comes here, and Iskander as well. They're both great. They're probably on Eric's. All right. I really hope we get a pro-Zionist or pro-Israeli. That would be beautiful. All right. Let's see here. There we go. So does anybody want to come up so we can test the audio for a guest, please? Let's test.
Hey, brother, how you doing?
Just hold on 1 second, Shaquille. Give me 1 second. We had 2 different times when I couldn't hear the guests. So we tried it once. I restarted the live. We tried it a second time. It didn't work. So I just rebooted my phone. So that seems to have fixed it. Very strange stuff. What we just want to let some people filter in. How have you been? You been okay?
I was going to say I've been very, very well. Just now getting busy with the beginning of the month of fasting, the month of Ramadan.
Yeah.
And so you've caught me on a unusual one because we're going to bed early because we've got to get up at 4 a.m. So I'm up in sort of 3.5 hours time for prayers and breakfast. So it means your sleep really gets disrupted, you know. So I won't be doing the staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning for a while. Well, at least for the next month or so, because you really do need the rest, you know. But I tell you what, whilst we're fasting, and we spend the most of the day without eating and drinking water, my heart just bleeds for what's going on in Palestine, because you know, for them it's a fast all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And you know, I was watching a video the other day, and it was live, and they were up in the morning at the same time as us here, and they had nothing to start their fast with. You know, and I just had tears streaming because it's hard, you know. To watch that, and then it's hard to swallow food when you know your brothers and sisters have none.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult, and usually in the fasting month, although we don't eat and drink during the hours of between the hours of sort of dawn till dusk, essentially, sunrise to sunset, you often find that people go a little overboard in the evening and celebrate with a really nice hearty meal, you know, with lots of variety. And I've sort of been making it very clear to everybody that that's not the right way. Our food should be simple. You know, whatever you eat should be really, really humble and simple, because it's a month of spirituality, you know, and it defeats the object when you then fill yourself with more calories than you would have had in a normal day. And, you know, having fancy foods, etc. The whole idea is to humble yourself and make yourself spiritual, make you be mindful of those people who have less than you. And that is really the big lesson from it, is that it makes you remember people who are in difficulty. It makes you remember people who are struggling and have less than you. And so the whole idea is really to be as simple as possible. And what we're finding is, I tell you what's amazing, we've always had our non-Muslim neighbors and friends join us. But this time, because it's obviously linked to Palestine, more than ever before, we have so many more people just randomly, people who don't even have any Muslim friends, just watching media or social media, and they're just joining in with the fasting in solidarity with the people of Gaza. And it's so beautiful to see. So a massive shout out and a thank you to those people who are not Muslims. They're not born with this tradition. You know, I'm sort of the same age as you now, and I've been doing this since I was about 9 years old. And so we look forward to it, and we're used to it, even when it's tough. You know, in the summer months, you could literally have 19 hours in the heat of the day, you can't even have water. But
Why
we
is that?
mentally, we're
Why
prepared.
is that? Why is not having water okay?
Um, it's really to challenge you and test you and to humble you. Because for some people, having no water for days on end sometimes can be their normal day. You know, it's really to make you appreciate things. It's to make you bow your head in submission to your Lord and your Creator, to make you understand that we are nothing. For those of us who are religious, and the early Christians used to fast as well, by the way. I mean, nowadays Christians generally don't fast. I think in some communities they do, but the majority don't. But the early Christians used to fast as well. So this is something that's very common with both communities. But it's really to humble you, to remind you of of who you are and where you've come from and how we got here, and also to be a humble person, and to feel the hunger and the pain of those who are in poverty. For some people, they can go a whole day without drinking a glass of clean water or having more than a handful to put in their stomach. And so it is a very humbling experience when you spend the whole day not eating, not drinking, and there's food all around you wherever you walk. I was with my wife in the car earlier visiting my parents and her parents' graves today. It was my dad's anniversary of 25 years since he passed. And just driving past a fast food restaurant, and my wife was saying, "Oh my God, smell that." And there's still an hour to go before we can eat. And it takes discipline, it really is to make you disciplined as well. And it's also designed to humble you so that you become more spiritual, you become more at one with the balance of nature. And that's also important, that you don't become a person of greed. It's really designed also to show you how to curb greed and excess, and to live a simple life, and be grateful for what we have. And I tell you what, when you've been hungry and thirsty all day, you become incredibly grateful for what you've got.
Sure.
You know,
That makes a lot of sense. I agree with you about living simply. I think that's a really important message that gets completely lost on this consumeristic, individualistic culture that we live in, at least in the United States. I'm not sure about where you live.
So I mean, I'm in the UK. So I was going to say, there's a couple of comments here. I was going to say, why don't you just go provide clean water to people who without? I think that says. You know what, the Muslim community are the biggest charity givers as a group, and one of the big things that we Muslims do is we regularly give charity for water wells. So we may pay for a water well in a poor village or a poor town for people who don't have access to water, and you then honour that in the name of a deceased family member. So we are quite big on that. So somebody's got, is gluttony the more looked down upon sin? I think gluttony is a big sin, and this also coincides with the Bible. The Bible talks about it'll be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man. But it's referring to the rich man, really, who's obese and oversized as well, because he doesn't give a damn about his fellow neighbor.
Right.
And so this is a time where we look out for our neighbors, we look out for people who maybe have less than us, and we share our food with them. So it's very, very common that we share food, we have communal meals. We'll often eat at the mosque in the evening, and I mean anybody can come. Anybody can come and eat and join us. And it's just a time of being more conscious. And the thing is, because it's a whole month of a year, it's 30 days. It drills that into you,
That's a
that
lot
being
of time.
charitable. Yeah, it's a long time, it's it really drills it into you, and it becomes a lifelong lesson that you become somebody who is mindful of other people. And we have we have religious teachings as Muslims in that Do not talk about your parents in front of an orphan. Do not eat food in front of a hungry person. Things like that. Do not show off your circle of friends in front of a lonely person. Be mindful of the condition of others, and help those people who you can. So yeah, I mean that's really it's just and also smile at the person. Smiling, by the way, we have this thing where an act of charity doesn't just mean giving money or giving food or clothing or whatever.
Right.
Smiling at another person is an act of charity. And that's actually a big one, that is. Because you can change somebody's day by giving them a smile. How often do you see somebody and nobody's... I'll give you an example. Like, I always, when I go shopping, I know those, usually women who work behind the checkout. They've been working long hours, they're standing on their feet. Hardly anybody ever speaks to them. And they pay for their shopping. They don't even have eye contact with them. I always make sure I have eye contact, I have some small talk, and I smile at them. And the comments you get back, like, nobody's spoken to us all day long. And you just know the smile changes on their face as you walk away. And that can be your act of charity. It doesn't mean that, charity doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pull out your checkbook. Your charity can come from your heart in an act of kindness, and these are just simple things that we do, and this is why when you look at the Palestinians, the Gazans, look at the way they have suffered, the extreme levels they've suffered. I've not seen any of them ranting and raving, wishing badness upon their oppressors. All they do is they say, our lives are in the hands of God, and we seek the help of Allah, the Creator God. Allah is just the Arabic word for God, and the same God of Moses, the same God of Jesus, the same God of Noah, the same God of Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon them all. And when you look at, this is how we're raised to be grateful. We're raised to understand that when we face challenges, when we're under oppression, when we're under tyranny, when we're suffering, this is not something to complain about. This is a test. And you know what? When you view it in this way, all of a sudden, you're less prone to depression, etc., because you're not now thinking, woe is me. All you're thinking is that this is a test, and this too shall pass. And there will be a justice, or there'll be a recompense at some stage for you. We have a saying that, your Creator will not burden anybody beyond more than you can handle. And so we have faith in that. And that faith is incredibly powerful because it gives you the strength. And this is what you're seeing right now. The Palestinians, etc., their strength and their faith and the depth of their faith is just on a whole other level. And it's so important to understand when you look at these Zionist lunatics wishing ill upon the Palestinians, and they wish the worst upon them, and they say the most vile, horrid things, yet they're not the ones being oppressed, they are the oppressor. And in return, you see these Palestinians whose properties are bombed, their lives are destroyed, their family members are torn from limb to limb by huge munitions, and they don't curse their oppressor. They just ask for it's unbelievable. I'm just trying to think, if I was in their position, would I be the same? I'm just looking at the level of their humility and their humanity is is off the scale. It truly is off the scale. And massive thank you to you, Chip, for enabling a voice and a platform, and the support that you give. It's unbelievably commendable. Oh, by the way, great news, and you probably are aware of it, but there was massive rallies in Yemen for Aaron Bushnell to honor him.
Mm-hmm.
And they honor him as a martyr and a hero. And also in a West Bank town, they've named a street after him. Absolutely phenomenal. So it just means that his legacy, I was just thinking today, like, his legacy has gone global. It's tragic what he did. I wish there was somebody who could have stopped him before that happened. Because ending, the end of a life is never a good thing. But his life won't go wasted, because his name will go down in the history books. Such a kind soul. But I'm going to hand back to you, Chip. Thank you so much, because I'm going to get ready for bed, and I'm going to listen in whilst I get ready to get some sleep and have an early night for once. Take care.
All right,
God
good.
bless you, brother.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Yeah, it's got to be challenging going, that long without food or water, and it's good to keep it in, keep it in perspective with what other people are dealing with, of course, especially those in Gaza. But there are a lot of other people worldwide that very rarely have access to clean water. They get sick from drinking polluted water, and then they get dysentery, and it's a terrible cycle of, it's the number one killer worldwide is people drinking, water that's been infected with parasites or bacteria or whatever it may be. And then it makes them really sick in their intestines, and they can't, it just makes them sick, and then they die from dehydration from being sick like that. That's a terrible way to be, and it's all over the place. And someone said earlier, why don't you just give these people clean water? Well, that's a fair question to ask. It's because of the systems that are in place. If the systems that were in place were geared towards helping everybody and not towards trying to make money, then they would be able to give water to everybody. They'd be able to make sure everybody has everything they need, basics. There's plenty of basics to go around. The problem is that the systems incentivize hoarding, for lack of a better term. And that makes the inequality, come to be. And the inequality is what leads to these different outcomes, many of which are horrific. All right, really quickly, we had 375 people on here before we had to switch up because of the technical problems. And now we're down to 110, 114. So could everybody please take a second, not only to please like the live by tapping on the screen, but also, if you don't mind, I did it when I first restarted. If you hold the screen down for like a half a second, a list of all of your friends will come up, and then you can invite them. Welcome back, Lane. Because like I said, we had close to 400 people in here. Now we have a lot less. So I'll give you all a second to do that while I finish this little scrap of one of my, I guess I should feel guilty for eating this because other people don't have food, but I started it. I'm going to finish it. Thank you for sharing the live. Those of you who are sharing it, appreciate you doing that. I know it's kind of a pain in the neck, but it's free. That's the good news. It's free. I'm going to tap on the screen too. I can do some likes. I'll do it with you. Although you can see the phone is shaking a little bit. Yeah, Shaq is great. He's a very, very, very well-spoken human being with a big heart and a lot of knowledge. Great combination. And he is into his, I think it's the third day now of Ramadan, if I'm not mistaken. Did you all hear that Sean King took his, what is it called? I don't have the right name, so I'm not going to try to mess it up. But it's like when you take your vow to Islam. He and his wife, is it Daiwa? Is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called. Shahada. Sorry. Yeah, I knew I shouldn't have said it because I screwed up. So he did that, and it's in Arabic. So of course I would do terribly. He did really well. But yeah, Sean King, the person who was kicked off of Instagram, he had like 6 million followers, some crazy number. He and his wife, I think it was within the last week or so, did it. It was his birthday or anniversary. I think it was his birthday, and he did it. So good for him. Everyone always asks me, "What are you?" I'm not affiliated with any organized religion. I've tried really hard to try to get my head around, and I know it's probably because I'm stubborn and evidence driven. And who knows? Never say never. But I just haven't been able to find my way to a space where I thought I was being genuine about. I think if you're going to be a part of something, you should be honest. Like you shouldn't just try to say something to appease people. And when I was growing up, I was raised in a Christian environment. And like most people, a lot of people now are secular. They don't really have a clear understanding or belief. Although there are a lot of people here who are Christian in the United States, let's face it. But somebody says Sean King gives me bad vibes. Hannah, I gotta say that I'm not. I don't disagree with you there because there's some things I came to learn. I don't usually like to share them too much, but there are some concerns there. But I don't want to badmouth him because he's got to figure out his way to do his life. But let's just say that there's some smoke there. I'll leave it that way. I think your instincts are pretty well found there. And some of the nicknames people have given him are funny, but I'm not going to repeat them here either because they are kind of disparaging. But there are a lot of people who do videos on YouTube about Sean, about the things they're concerned about. You can probably find them if you look for them. I don't need to say that. Patty says, "Don't worry, he accepted Islam. Now he'll get better." Yeah, we all should be striving to get better, hopefully, right? As flawed as we all are. Yeah, faith is people's own business. Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think condemning somebody else's faith because they're wrong is silly, right? Because who knows for sure. And I don't know. The word I use to describe myself is I'm confused. That's the truth because I have no way to deny anything that anybody says that is what they say it is because I don't have proof that it isn't. And I also don't have any evidence that it is. So that's where I struggle. But I've mentioned this before. People who are of faith, there seems to be a much more calm steadiness to them. They're a little more grounded. They're not quite as stressed out. I admire that. I wish I could come to that. I don't know. The thing that someone shared with me was they said that the first step is to submit yourself absolutely to, the I think thing that's greater than yourself, and that was a struggle for me because who are you submitting to? I couldn't really get my head around like to whom is the submission going. I just didn't feel. Maybe I'm just being too analytical, but for those, I want to have a panel about this one night where people can come up and talk about it. Because I'm just curious to learn how people came to believe what they believe. It fascinates me. In fact, I don't really care what people believe. I'm more concerned. I'm more curious about how they came to believe it, like who told them or how did they learn it or whatever it may be. I know some people are brought up in families or cultures where it's just expected that you, and maybe as a part of that process, you just do. But I've always been so skeptical, and I watch these different shows on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but it's like they have somebody who's it's like a call-in show. It's like Ask an Atheist or something like that. And so I'm not an atheist because I don't know. I'm confused. But there are people who are atheists and they take phone calls from people who are believers, usually in Christianity. And then they have these conversations where the people who believe in Christianity try to prove that God exists to the people on the panel. And the people on the panel will say, okay, well, what's your evidence? Let's hear it. I'm happy to hear it. And they'll say like, well, the sky. And they say, well, what do you mean? They say, well, the sky has to be created by a creator. It couldn't just happen by accident. And they said, well, they say, where's the evidence? They go, it's the Bible. And then they say, well, where in the Bible does it talk about the sky? And who wrote the Bible? And on it goes. And I find those shows entertaining. I've always been waiting for the evidence part. And maybe people think that's arrogant or presumptive to say something like that. I mean, who am I to ask for evidence, right? That's fair. But just out of my own curiosity, I'm curious to hear if there is any direct like evidence. I've had friends who have tried to talk to me about Christianity since I've been older. And one guy, we were sitting around, it was very pleasant. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't confrontational, but he's like, don't you see that when there's trees and water and birds and everything, he's like, doesn't that have to be somebody who created it? And I said, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't, it does, it would make sense if that was the case. Like obviously everything else we have, we've created everything like humans do. We create stuff and we take this and that, put it together. We create something, whether it's art or other stuff. But I don't know. It's just outside my realm of understanding. And I love thinking about these other issues like the universe. I don't know if you've seen videos about the universe, but it's unthinkably large. It's just like, it's absurdly big. And they have to measure distances to other objects in the amount of time it takes light to travel in 1 year. And just to let you know, in 1 second, light can go around the entire Earth 7 times in 1 second. So that's a pretty big distance, right? 7 times around the Earth in 1 second. Well, imagine how many seconds in a year. There's a lot. There's 60 seconds in a minute, 360 seconds in 6 minutes. Times 60, that's 3,600 seconds an hour. And just think of all that distance. It's unthinkable. So I think 7 light years is the closest star to the sun from us. Think about that for a second. That's just mind-boggling. So when it comes back to all this, and again, this is where my mind goes, and I'm not trying to be impolite or disrespectful to anyone else's beliefs. I'm just sharing with you where my mind traverses when I start to think about these things. And it keeps coming back to like, is this just something that we as human beings, because of our finite way of thinking and being, just can't get our heads around? Like there's some other dimension that we just don't perceive with our level of consciousness that relates to the things that is hard for us to get our heads around, like time and origins or lack of origin or continuum or infinity or whatever the whole thing is that I can't seem to figure out. And nobody else has been able to yet either, which is the whole quandary of human existence, right? Here we are. Think about it. Here we are. We're on this rock that spins once every, what we call 24 hours, but in one revolution, we're back in front of the sun again. And then it takes 365 of our one revolutions to get around the entire sun in terms of its orbit. And that the sun is in the middle of this little thing we call a solar system, and it's all gravity driven. We've kind of figured that stuff out, which is pretty amazing in and of itself that we figured that stuff out, right? I think that's pretty cool. In fact, people got in big trouble back in the day for thinking that the Earth wasn't the center of this little system that we have called our solar system. But it doesn't. Indeed, the sun is in the center. But it's not like we're sitting in this little spin. It's all moving through space at this vast speed. And we're just kind of trailing the sun as it goes through space. And everything's kind of expanding. And I don't know, man. The whole thing is just very hard to wrap your head around, at least for me. And so when I think of creation, when I think of the Earth, we know the Earth is a place in a solar system. And our solar system is a place in a broader thing called a galaxy. Our galaxy is called the Milky Way. It's a spiral galaxy. And then we know that there's the nearest galaxy to us is Andromeda. And that's some ridiculous distance away in light years. And then there's hundreds and hundreds of billions of galaxies in the observable universe. And that's just the 45 billion light years across we can see on either side. That's 90 billion light years. It's a lot of light. It's a lot of distance, right? 90 billion years light traveling at the speed of light. That's crazy. And then on top of that, that's what they can see based on the light. The way the universe expands is the light from distant places will never reach us because it's expanding away from us faster than the light can reach us. And the light that we are seeing from distant places, in some cases, can be from billions of years ago. So we're seeing the light, the remnants of 4.5 billion or 40 billion years ago of other places that they could have blown up. And we won't even know about it for another, 4 billion years, whatever it is. It's just crazy to think about. Come on, man, we are not moving. I'm not sure what you mean by that. What I would say is this: I don't know if he means we're not going to move off the planet, or if he needs we need to move the conversation. But I agree with that. There are people that think we're going to go to Mars, stuff like that, and I will share this with the audience. Humans will never colonize Mars. Never, never going to happen. I didn't say that humans wouldn't reach Mars. There may be some individual astronauts or small groups that get there. It takes like 8 or 9 months to travel there from Earth. And it takes like 20 minutes for a message to transmit from Mars to Earth. So if I say hello on Mars with a transmitter, 20 minutes later, you can hear hello. So it doesn't really make going back and forth very easy in terms of fixing stuff. But in terms of our future, that's why I think it's so important that we take the Earth seriously, that we don't forsake it, basically, in the short term with industrial society. I mean, it's very cool the way we get to live. Don't get me wrong, I like all the conveniences, but if the trade-off is that we mess the place up to a point where the living systems on the outside edge called the biosphere get distorted, it makes it hard for mammals like us to survive. What was the point? What was the point at all? Somebody says you're too empirical. Well, I don't even know what that means, but I just try to talk about stuff that interests me. I understand it doesn't interest everybody. And if you're somebody who doesn't like it, certainly there are plenty of other alternatives on TikTok to choose from. But, these are things that go through my head. I'm not even, using the old Cheech and Chong medicine either, so although people tend to think about this stuff more. But yeah, it's a lot to think about, right? So that so what happens? How did things get started? What happens when we're no longer around, right? Like, these are all the big questions. And I don't know if there are any answers that are for sure. There's all sorts of human construct, many of which believe is absolute truth. I'm sure there are people on this live that believe that their faith in Islam or their deity and prophets is unquestioned, that it's absolute certainty in their mind. And I would say, in response to that, I will probably never have that certainty, because I'm just I question everything usually. And so even if I was to read about it and believe it, like take it for it being, it makes sense, it's probably the best explanation among the others, I just couldn't have certainty in it because it doesn't have direct evidence. That's the problem I have with it. Faith requires that. It requires you leap. You suspend your need for evidence and give of yourself to something that is non-evidentiary. And I think that's a tough one for people that are ruthlessly evidence-driven in the way they try to think and do things. And maybe it's not even a thinking thing. Maybe you have to be able to separate your cognition and your intellect and your analytical side from your spiritual side and just let that part go, perhaps. I've just never been able to. And I wish I could figure out a way to do it. I just don't want to be inauthentic. I think nothing's worse than people that say they believe something but they're lying. Like you see these people on TV, these televangelists that are asking for money. And they don't, and that's the other thing about Christianity is, as far as I understand it, Christ talks about, living a very simple life and helping the poor and embracing those people who have maybe, that are shunned by everybody else, forgiveness. And I see a lot of people who are Christian who don't do any of that stuff. It's like a man, they go to the buffet line and they pick this thing called Christ, but they ignore all the other stuff that Christ talked about. In fact, if Christ came back today, which people say they want the second coming of Christ, he would be completely opposed to everything that we're doing. Right on down the line. Just go on down the line. Nuclear weapons? Are you kidding me? Global commerce for the sake of profit? No, not having it. So Christ would be demonized as a radical if he came back today. And he would be shunned and he would be imprisoned or killed, just like he was back in the day. Because the status quo can't stand disruptive forces. Can't take it. And he'd be looked at later, after he was killed or imprisoned, as being a great hero for what he spoke of. But at the time, just like Martin Luther King at the time when he was alive, was hated by the establishment. He was talked about horrifically because he was a disruptive force. The balance was, at that time, was certain people were in different places in our society and they just didn't want to have to deal with that shit. But alas, now he's a hero, right? For some reason, this is how humans operate, man. We are strange creatures, aren't we? No, I don't think Elon. Someone says, will Elon come along and buy TikTok? That's a great question. No, Elon Musk is not going to buy TikTok. He's got his hands full with Twitter and all the payments with that. His stock is cratering right now, Tesla stock. Okay, Brenda's back, and hopefully Brenda connects this time with no problem. There she is.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's a miracle.
Okay. Okay, good. That only took about an hour. But you're talking about some really interesting things in terms of religion. So I think my biggest problems, because I'm also not religious. I was raised Catholic, very Catholic, and I deviated from the Catholic Church at an early age, and I was a lost. Not, I don't want to say a lost soul, but I disbelieve. I had a strong disbelief in pretty much any religion, and I think I still do, because I think the problem with religions is man, because I think so many religions are based on love, and like you said, Jesus advocated all about helping the poor, feed the poor, and that's just not what Christianity or Catholicism, with its extravagance in the Vatican, and like these churches that just sit empty while there's like an increasing amount of homeless people just around the world. And I think you talked about this in a live a while ago, about how the rates of homelessness in Arab countries is like almost non-existent. And I think that is a very interesting point to bring up, because when we talk about the fear that is kind of drilled into us about Islam, they don't talk about these things. They don't talk about like the amazing things that happen in Muslim countries. Like, I lived in the Middle East for 5 years. I visited Palestine when I was a young girl, but I also worked in Dubai for a long time. And I traveled all around the region, and I never felt unsafe. And the devotion to Islam, to like Friday prayers, iftar, Ramadan, all of that, to me and then to the prayers every day, the mosques and the call to prayer, like that to me was interesting, because I moved from the U.S., a place that's very Christian, and how young people are starting to move more and more away from religion, whereas in some Islam is growing in numbers, and there's something to that. And I think the deviation away from churches has a lot to do with the corruption of what comes of establishments. And I'm not saying that Islam is perfect, because there's no religion that's perfect. But I did live and traveled all around Muslim countries, and I also rarely saw homelessness. There was very little crime in where I lived. And something really interesting that some people might be interested in this, how they say the intolerance. This is a talking point that gets brought up a lot about that why they don't want to give the same rights to the Palestinians in all of Israel is because, they use it, well, in the rest of the countries, they don't do that. This is just a Muslim country. But when I lived in Dubai, there's a section of Dubai where the Sheikh Mohammed and Sheikh Khalifa, who is the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi and the Sheikh of Dubai, they designated freedom of religion as a right to anybody who lives in the Emirates. And they said there's a section of Dubai that has a specified area for every religion to set up their temple of worship. So back when I used to live there, they didn't have relations with Israel, so they didn't have a synagogue. But they did have for everything, for Hinduism, Buddhism, like all of the denominations of Christianity. So the tolerance, I think, is something that is not spoken about. Like, I also lived in Southeast Asia, and I lived in Myanmar for 2 years, and it's a very Buddhist country. And I mean, obviously Myanmar has its issues with the junta, again, corruption from man, but the country itself was just like so peaceful. And the entire time that I lived there, which was 2 years, I saw to homeless people, and they were mentally ill. So that was, there's that. But
Yeah.
I think the supremacy that we establish as that like Western values and Western way of living, as like that's the right way. Like we're trying to spread democracy around the world, as if our democracy is like the most amazing thing in the world, and it's like it's serving everybody, and it's not. It's not necessarily. That's not the case.
Yeah, good point. There was somebody in the chat. I don't know if you recognize this. It's somebody named Prime. Let me see if I can see what they said here.
Oh yeah,
They
that
said,
guy's just like harassing me. I
yeah,
ignore.
Prime. I'm not sure why you say that. Prime, the statement is Brenda is so intolerant. She was speechless about my PFP. I don't know what that even means.
He was talking
But
about you. He tagged me in some video about you, and I'm just gonna ignore him because it's just I'm not gonna give people like that the time of day. I did want to share this story, so I think before I drop because it's kind of late where I am, but there was this so Mexico City. Mexico is a very Catholic place. Years ago, I visited the main Catholic like temple, like church. It's called the Basilica de Guadalupe, and I don't know if you know, but the Virgin of Guadalupe is like the Virgin Saint of Mexico, and so it's a very interesting story. And I had a tour, and it was an indigenous person who gave us a tour. And there's a very famous mantle that's hanging up at the very front. It's this huge church. And so the story goes like this, that back in, the 1500s, when the Spaniards were still they had colonized Mexico, but they were having a lot of difficulties with converting the indigenous people to Catholicism. So this miracle happened, as we say, of this young man called Juan Diego. So Juan Diego was on his way to church, and he encountered the Virgin Mary. And the Virgin Mary is the Virgen de Guadalupe, the Virgin Saint. And so she tells him to tell the bishop to make a temple in her honor on this hill. And so he goes to the church and he tells the bishops, and the bishop laughed at him. He's like, why would the Virgin Mary come to you, like an indigenous person? Say, bring us proof. So he went back to the hill where he had the vision, and the Virgin Mary appeared to him again and told him that the proof for him to pick some roses that were on the side there. And so he picked a bunch of roses, he put it in his mantle, so he takes it to the priest, and then he releases all the roses, and there is like the image imprinted of the Virgin Mary. And this mantle is like framed and put up in the front. And so, coincidentally after this, in mass, the indigenous people started converting to Catholicism, after this story was. And so to me, that just seemed like a very interesting way to convert the masses, which is like when I learned that story, it was one of those things that was just very interesting to me to start like deconstruct a lot of what I had learned, because like that's just such a huge coincidence to me of like how and then when they talk about like Christianity and there are no wars, or there are no things, like the biggest wars come in the name of Islam, and like I think every religion has launched wars and ethnic cleansing in the name of religion. I mean, we also have the Manifest Destiny in the United States. So that was just a perspective that I wanted to bring to the table, to just kind of have a balance of religion and the corruption of it. But, of course, there's also beautiful things that come with it, with all of them. I think in the pure essence of every religion is love. And if we just followed that, we would all be okay. But unfortunately, man is easily corrupted. But yeah,
yeah,
Chip, thank you so much for having me on. I'm gonna watch for a little while and then head to bed. Thank you.
thanks, Brenda. Thanks for being here. It's all good, Brenda. Julie, we have a couple minutes left here. I've had to restart the live a couple of times, so I'm going to go a little longer, but I have to shut down in about 5 minutes. Would you like to share what you wanted to say?
Hi, Chip.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for coming on my live the other day. That was unexpected. You freaked out some of my panelists.
Happy to do so.
Right. So, okay. So, I just wanted to bring up the parties again. I'm not telling anybody how to vote when I say these things. I just want people aware that there is a third choice that's viable, and it's up to us to decide whether we're going to do it. Like, for me personally, I can't vote for either of the current candidates on the red and blue. I just can't. you can't make me pick between G side and G side at this point. You know what I mean? So, so right now, we do have a third party candidate that's going to be on all 50 ballots. And a lot of people that are really terrified of having a Trump presidency don't realize, like what you said earlier, he's probably going to win, because there are people that came out for him the last time that are losing people in what's going on in Palestine. And they won't come out to vote for him this time. And the election was actually pretty close last time. So I'm just saying there is a third party choice. And you know, like there's more people in the United States that don't vote than do. And I just think it's possible. And if anything, just to send a message, because I just really have come to the conclusion with all this stuff that we've learned for the last 5 months, that both sides of the political system seem to be pretty much the same. Like one's bad cop and one's good cop, you know, and they're just playing each other so they can still keep the control for the people that line their pockets with money.
Yeah, that's a mess. But do you mind sharing the name of the candidate that you support, or would you rather not do that?
It's Jill Stein with the Green Party.
Okay.
Originally, Carnell West was running on the Green Party ticket. He dropped right before ballot access deadline in California. And Green is projected to get all 50 states. Last time they got 48 states, but the two states that they had trouble getting last time they already got. So they're going to get all 50 states ballot access, which is really important because 9 states in the US don't allow write-ins, and even the states that do, if you Can you hear me again? Sorry, I had to call.
Yeah.
Am I echoing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so 50 oh wait. So even if you write in, okay, so 50 oh wait.
Yeah, something happened with your connection. I'm not sure what it is.
Is that
Let's do
better?
that. Can you?
I think I fixed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I fixed it.
That sounds
Sorry.
good. Yeah.
If you get a call, everybody, all you have to do is swipe out of the app and then go back in, and it should fix it. Okay. Yeah. So in the states that you can write in ballot access, you if you misspell the word or they can't read your handwriting, they can just toss it out. So ballot access is really important. And I'm just throwing that out there for anybody. I'm not going to tell anybody how to vote. I just know a lot of people aren't going to vote for either of the candidates, and they're 63% of the people in the country. It was a poll done in November of last year. 63% of our country want a third party. And there is one. If we all back the same one, we could probably get somewhere. And make sure not to just vote for president, to vote for all the local things and everything. So 1/3 of our Senate is on the ballot this time, and so is the House and down. But that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for having me up, Chip.
All right. Thanks, Julie. I think part of the challenge with that, I think somebody brought up in the comments, they said, you know, what's the point? Third parties never really have much of a chance in this country. And I understand everything's got to start from somewhere, right? You want your vote to be worth something. And some people say it's throwing your vote away. Some people say, no, it sends a statement. But historically, what it's done, just for strict math, is that mathematically speaking, the third party candidates have not gotten a significant number of presidential percentage of the popular vote. I think the most that was ever gotten was like 27%, if I'm not mistaken. I think the total number of electors based on that was 19%. So it's still a quarter of the vote, which is pretty substantial. I mean, nowadays that's unheard of. But it ends up taking votes from one of the other candidates typically that tilts the balance. This happened with Ralph Nader, who ran against Al Gore and George Bush, Nader being this consumer advocate, sort of, outspoken critic of both parties. And he probably took more Democratic votes than he did Republican. And therefore, Al Gore, it was a very close election. Al Gore lost. And of course, we know what happened with George W. Bush, the war on terror, all that stuff. So who knows? But anyway, but I argue all the time that, it's always good to get somebody good in, no matter who it may be. If you can get somebody good into Congress or into the Senate or even the presidency, it'd be great. But the higher up the ladder you go, the harder it is to get good people because of how the game is played. And so I just don't believe that voting at the federal level is going to be the thing. It's not bad to do, but in and of itself will not be enough to tilt the balance of power away from the way we see things operating right now. Unfortunately, I wish it weren't the case. Okay, and by the way, she mentioned Dr. Jill Stein, who's a very nice person. I've met Dr. Stein. She's awesome as a human being. I love her. And unfortunately, like anything else, these third parties, like we said, just don't get much traction, and they barely make it on the ballot. And then people don't even know who they are because they don't get the TV time. They're not invited to the debates. It's really it's a lopsided system. It's all geared towards perpetuating the establishment. It's a bad deal, and we get left with, bad and worse as our choices as far as what we'd really want. So therein lies the problem, but we can't fix that tonight. That's for sure. I do want to thank everybody for being here. If I didn't answer your questions or didn't get you as a guest, I apologize. This is going to be recorded. There was actually 3 chunks of this tonight. The first chunk was pretty good until we had to try to fix the technical problems. The second chunk was like a technical glitch, and this is the third one. So I'll put up parts 1 and 2 and skip the middle. It'll be on my YouTube and my Rumble channel within the hour. You can find that in my bio in the link tree, which is just Linktree Chip Barnes. You can click through, or if you're from outside the US, the text to get there is written in my bio. You just type it into a web browser, hit enter, takes you to the same place. You'll see it's self-explanatory. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I know it was kind of quick and brief. I'll be on again Saturday from 12 noon Eastern time until 3 p.m., maybe 4 p.m. So if you didn't get a chance to talk much tonight, you want to come back, please do. And I'll see everybody on Saturday. Have a great night, everybody.